And I think we're live. I'm pretty sure we're live. It's Shaun here from Essential Talent. And yes, we are live. How fantastic. And my special guest today is the incredible Brad Smeele. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, good. I'm just sharing the live chat on my
He's,
thing,
he's a little preoccupied at the moment.
sharing the live. So
I love it.
for the Facebook fans, got to do it.
Oh yes, exactly. This might actually be good for my little show. Hey, thanks so much for making time today. Really appreciate
my
it.
pleasure. I've been meaning to do it, but I was just obviously seeing you've been busy, and I keep seeing them pop up even now that we're not in lockdown. I was like, oh well, may as well get one in.
I love it. I actually know Brad's mum, Linda. Linda worked in radio for years and years and years and years and years, and is such a nice person, such a driven person. So I'm not surprised that you as a person have got those traits as well. I was actually looking back. For those of you who have been on another planet and you're not sure who Brad is, Brad Smeele is a champion wakeboarder, and I was strangely enough, I was actually doing a little bit of prep for this interview, which, as everybody knows, is so unlike me. But I was going through it, and I was looking at your introduction video again that you have before you do your talks, and you say that you started off as a wakeboarder and having some success in New Zealand, and then at 17, you decided, I'm going to go and chase summers around the world, which I thought, and I was thinking to myself, I left home at about 16 or 17, and I can't remember, maybe it was just approaching 17. I can remember, it felt incredibly young from just moving from the South Island to the North Island. And I was just trying to picture, how did that conversation go down with your mother when you said, I'm going to leave school and go wakeboarding around the world and chase summers?
Yeah, well, that's where the conversation started. Was I'm going to leave school, and then so we had to get through that part first. And I actually ended up going to Auckland University, or AUT. Briefly, I didn't even finish my one semester I was there, but it was more of like a sort of an agreement that I made, so that to keep mum and dad happy that I dropped out of school a year early. And it was a certificate in sport and recreation. It was a bullshit paper, really. It meant nothing. Kind of meant that I could maybe possibly go on to a whole variety of things, from being a coach to a physiotherapist to anything, but it was like the most basic sort of starting point. And then, at the end of summer, I got a call from a guy a Kiwi guy who was working at a wakeboard camp in Orlando. And I was like, well, I could get this bullshit paper that says I can kind of sort of maybe coach some sports, or I could go and learn to coach wakeboarding from the best coaches in the world. And so it was a no-brainer for me. And I, ran that by mum. And having gone to Florida herself to pursue water skiing when she was younger, she obviously understood. And as long as I had everything lined up and everything, then she was happy with it.
How good were you before you left New Zealand? You left at 17. Were you leaving New Zealand going, I am at a place where I can be the best in the world at this? No?
I mean, I wanted, that's what I wanted, but I'd won a junior national title when I was 14, maybe, and then straight away stepped up to open men's that next year, because winning the same title over again just didn't seem appealing to me. And I think I got 7th in open men's that first year, and then my second year in open men, I must have been 16, I got 3rd. And then I must have got 3rd again that next year. I'd met some of my best friends, one who's actually one of my caregivers now, I met them when I was probably 13. They were 18, 19, had just come back from their first season in the US. And, I'm down at the wakeboard club down at Oriki Basin. Just this kid, just so super hyperactive and just addicted to wakeboarding.
I love it.
Being told you can travel the world and go to Orlando, and being told about all the girls and partying and all this stuff that my older friends had gotten into. And so I just instantly, that's what I wanted to do. And
so you left home at 17 and first stop was Orlando, is that right?
Yeah, I went to Orlando, spent it was about 5 months, I think, working at a wakeboard camp there. And it was full time. I barely got away from there. So by the end of the season, I was kind of burnt out. Like I was like, I don't know if I want to do that again. As much as it was like so good for me to be completely immersed in wakeboarding and surrounded by it the whole time. After that amount of time immersed in it without any escape, I was like, okay, I need a bit of a break. But then I went from there to Spain for the World Champs, and that was my second time competing for New Zealand. The first one was in Australia the year before. And
so were you still 17 then, or you a bit older?
I was still 17. So the year before in Australia, I was 16. We got third as a team in the world, but then I had a pretty crappy result myself. And then, that next year, still 17, went to Spain for the Worlds and
won gold.
Went a lot better that time, yeah.
Won gold, 17. That's unreal. Did you have any expectations of doing that?
No, not at all. Especially after the year before, I'd seen kind of the competition I was up against, and I definitely improved a lot that summer. But I got there and didn't really know like what competitors were going to be there and how it was all going to go. That particular federation as well was always a bit of a shambles. We'd go there and not know if we were going to be hitting ramps or rails because, this particular one, they were still building them when we got there and we're doing rail practices and everything. So they hadn't even finished building these obstacles. And then they floated them out into the middle of the water and they sunk. So we didn't get to hit them. So and that was only one of an issue. Another one was they were pouring diesel into the boat when it took gas.
Oh my God! Talk me through that feeling of being a 17-year-old kid in Spain and winning gold for your country. How did that? What's going on in your head? How are you feeling when that happens?
I mean, it was surreal at the beginning. It doesn't actually sink in. The first moment, I mean, obviously standing on the podium was amazing, holding the flag up, and one of my teammates, another Kiwi, was in third next to me, and one of my good friends from Australia was in second, and so we, it was cool having all us three guys up on the podium holding the flag up, and so that was the first moment. Second one was when one of my sponsors, so I was sponsored by Oakley at the time.
Yeah.
And the European Oakley rep was there, and he comes up to me and he was all stoked, and he was like, hey, is there anything you need? Like, I see you got some Oakley shades on and this and that. And I look at his wrist and I'm like, oh, that's a nice Oakley watch. I look at my wrist, I was wearing like a non-Oakley watch. So I just made some little comment, and he just took I took like a $1,200 watch off his wrist and put it on mine. He was like, there you go. And then, then the next moment after that was when they had. Do you remember the Reef Girls? Like they used to have posters like of girls in like the just thong bikinis, like Brazilian. I mean, it was always.
No, I remember. I remember the Miller girls that were sort of like that Miller beer. They had the models going all around New Zealand. I don't know if you get away with that these days.
Yeah. So Reef is like a surf brand, and they'd always have like posters of girls in these like thong bikinis, and so they had a Reef Girl contest, and of course in Spain it was like the most epic Reef Girl contest ever. And here I am just amongst that, just partying away and just having an epic time. So for me, that was, there were all these different moments, and it was, it was calling my parents back home and telling them, and yeah, it was a really cool experience.
So then the following year, where is it? The world champs again the next year? Is that right?
Yeah, but this was the other federation. So
I see.
What had happened after that? So my board sponsor at the time, I'd won Junior Worlds. I go and tell them I'm all stoked, and they were like, "Oh yeah, it's a shame those worlds aren't really that acknowledged in the core industry."
Oh, it's like, oh, thanks.
I was like, "Oh, cool, right." They wouldn't even put me on their junior team,
Yeah.
and then so the WWA Worlds, which are kind of, you know, it's the world champs where all of the best guys go to, whereas the other ones, those other worlds that I'd won, the reason we went is because it's our governing body in New Zealand. And so it's the one that New Zealand recognizes, or at least recognized as the pinnacle. And I got some funding from High Performance Sport NZ for winning that. But then the next year, the WWA ones aren't recognized by New Zealand, but are more recognized by the industry. So that's what my sponsor told me. You got to win those ones. So I went back the next year and won those ones.
How'd that feel?
That was even better because that came along with an award that was it was called the Mark Kenny Award, and Kenny was a rider that I got to ride with when I was, it was probably in like 2001 maybe. So I was probably 14, and he ended up dying a year later. He was one of the best in the world. Was just pretty much like starting to win all the events in the US, and he passed away. And so I was very honored to win the Mark Kenny Award.
Yeah.
It's sort of in memory of him.
What makes a world champion wakeboarder? Like, what characteristics do you have to have? I mean, it's interesting when you look at certain sports or certain categories in business, you find that a lot of the people that end up in say wakeboarding, they might have a certain trait that is common. Is that?
I would say one of those traits would be on a report card that would say, would do really well if he could focus more.
I love it.
I think that's mandatory for any world champion wakeboarder.
That is gold.
But yeah, I think just in terms of the sport, you know, like in a contest, you've got to have a good variety of flips and spins and grabs, and going big versus technical. And obviously you've got to be consistent as well. That's the main thing. You've got to be able to put your run down. You got one try to land your 10 best tricks in a row. And that's it.
So you said to your parents, I'm leaving home. I'm going to chase summers all around the world. You won these titles. You're having this fantastic life, really, aren't you? This beautiful woman. You're wakeboarding. You're just they're filming you. Life is pretty good. I want you to first of all, if you can, talk me through the very first time that you explained that still hasn't been done before. I think you did it in Germany by memory for the first time. Is that correct?
Yeah. So throughout my career, just to kind of backtrack a little, it wasn't all rainbows and fairy tales. As much as I had good times, it was a real struggle financially. Coming from New Zealand, there's not a lot of, like, you know, wakeboarding is such a niche sport that there's not much money in sponsorship at all, if anything. And then going to the US and returning to New Zealand for 6 months every year meant that I wasn't quite solid enough in the US to get the US sponsors. So I really struggled to get support. And, you know, in 2008, I was one of the first in the world to land a 1080. I was actually the first to land the particular type of 1080 that I did, which is 3 full spins. And that was the holy grail of wakeboarding tricks at that point. So that should have been a point where my career took off, and I should have gotten a whole bunch of money in. But as you may remember, '08 wasn't the best year for the global economy. So sponsorship budgets and stuff got brushed aside pretty quickly. So yeah, and then I went through injuries and, I had knee surgery, shoulder surgery a year later. And then so finally by 2012, 2013, I'm starting to, get fully fit, get back into it, getting some good contest results. At this point, I'd picked up the microphone and I was commentating the US Pro Tour, which helped me to be able to compete. It meant I could go there and actually get paid to do something and get free accommodation and stuff, and not be leaving going, okay, how much money have I lost now this time? So that helped. And then all the way up until what you mentioned, that double tantrum of blind, which is another, world first that I did. And I landed that in Germany, and pretty much leading right up to that, it was just getting better and better and better, and starting to get approached by sponsors, and I was, things were starting to look up. I was like, finally, I've cracked it.
Yeah.
And so, my friends were pushing me to, and pushed me to land it when I was in Germany for that event.
And you did?
I did in practice. I didn't land it in the event, so unfortunately, I think I got fourth. And then a few weeks later, I was back in Orlando at my home lake where I was living and managing Lake Ronix, actually right there, that beach with my friends on it next to me. That's Lake Ronix. Actually, that picture right there is Lake Ronix too.
Right.
And so I was managing this property, and we were filming this big, like, high budget wakeboard film with helicopters, filming wakeboarding, and drones and all the stuff flying around, and it was our last opportunity to film. I'd already landed a double flip, and it was going to basically be the final stamp at the end of the section. But now at this point, I'd already posted on my social media the video of the trick I landed in Germany, which is, an extra blind 180 on the end of it. And I was like, well, it would be a disappointment not to have that as the final trick. So I was so stubborn about it that I just kept pushing and pushing. And, I got really close to landing it a handful of times. But just the whole setup was slightly different than in Germany. So it was a slightly harder landing. And then, one just went wrong and put me here.
And you've said previously at the time, because you woke up I think a week later in ICU. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. So I woke up straight after the crash. I was still in the water. I'd been face down in the water, unconscious, and been flipped up, and that's when I came to. So I remember everything, like, kind of in and out of consciousness, going all the way through to arriving at the hospital, going in for my MRI, and then I remember the MRI technician telling me to stay still, saying, hey, this is going to take a while. You're going to have to stay still. I was like, dude, I've just become a quadriplegic. That's not going to be a problem. And then I don't remember anything after that for like a week. Yeah. And then I woke up and Mum was there, and it was full on.
And you say at the time, and I guess it's understandable, you say that, you wish that your mates had just left you there in the water.
I felt like life wasn't worth living anymore without everything that life was, with my physical abilities and weight.
Because everything was about movement, wasn't it?
Everything. Yeah, that's what I built. That's what I built my life around, and as much as I did apply myself using my brain as well, I built pretty much everything I did to make money was involved using my body, and everything I did to have fun involved using my body as well. So at that point, life seemed like it was going to be pretty shit from then on, and it just didn't seem like it was going to be worth it.
So tell me at what point did did you think, actually, life doesn't actually necessarily need to be shit? How long did that take to get to that point? Because, here you are, top of the world. You've gone through, you've had lots of challenges financially. You're finally, because of the global recession, you've stuck to your sport. You've done the hard yards. Life's looking good, and then this happens. At what point did you go, actually, life doesn't need to be shit? Because that must be hard.
So it was only a couple of weeks after I woke up in the hospital that I was like, okay, I don't want to die. That was kind of, by that point, I wasn't like, okay, life's not going to be shit. It was just like, okay, I'm going to fight this. I'm not going to give up. And then it was kind of a gradual thing, but I feel like there was this one kind of key moment that happened. Would have been probably around September 2017. So we're talking over 3 years afterwards.
Yeah.
I was probably since leaving like the hospital scene, the spinal unit and stuff, and moving into this house at that point. So that was like 6 months after the accident, or 7 months. At this point, in September 2017, I was in the worst state mentally that I had been that whole time after living, from moving in here. Yeah. And that was because at the beginning, I was so positive on the outside, while still on the inside, I was feeling pretty negative, but that outer positive shell kind of was fueling my positivity in a way, almost fake it till you make it. But and that kind of worked for me for a while. And I was doing so much physical rehab, and I was like, I need to get my movement back. I need to be, I need to get something back. I need to be able to move my arms and use my arms for me to be able to be happy and for me to be able to continue on with life and stuff. That was my train of thought, get back what I used to have.
Yes.
And then, September 2017, I basically kind of had a bit of a breakdown, and I was also and it was a combination of 2.5 years of nonstop physical rehab and not seeing any results, which, you can imagine, like trying to move a boulder every single day. And after 2.5 years, it still hasn't moved an inch. You're going to be pretty pissed off, pretty like you're feeling like you're not good enough, or like, it's never going to happen. And then I had some physical pain issues that I was dealing with as well. So I went back to the spinal unit to get those sorted. I don't know if you've been to the spinal unit. It's a pretty miserable place out in Otara. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to need to spend 2 weeks here to get these physical pain issues sorted. So while I'm there, I'm going to completely log off all social media. I'm going to focus on some writing. I'm going to focus on looking inward, and I'm going to focus on any of these emotions that come up, and I'm going to try to start pulling them apart and figuring out what's going on. And so those 2 weeks of that was really, really helpful. And then right after that, I went and saw a neurosurgeon. And this is my first time seeing a neurosurgeon after my accident, like after seeing the ones in the ICU and in the spinal unit. And I just recently had some scans done, some MRIs to kind of see what the state of my spinal cord was. And so I went in there, and I'd had this whole mind over matter approach as well. I was like, I can do this because I've got the power of the mind, right? And then there I am sitting with the neurosurgeon, literally seeing the matter in front of me. He's like, here is your MRI. Here is the giant clump of scar tissue in your spinal cord. this is exactly why you can't move. Like, this is why all the rehab's not working. And as much as that was really shit, and, you know, it was very grounding. Like, it kind of actually brought me back to, you know, as much as I was like, oh, I'm going to walk again, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. This was like, okay, this is the reality of your situation now. And I'd been through this, you know, as you remember in my intro video, I talk about acceptance and how I hated the word, didn't want to accept it. But then this was a point where I was like, I kind of need to accept this. I need to see what's in front of me and realize that I have actually done this damage to my spinal cord, and it's not something that I can just undo with my mind. You know, some people may beg to differ, and I tried for years and put as much intention to that as I could. So that's where I was like, look, all right, maybe I need to dial back the rehab so it's not 5 days a week. It's not a full-time job. And I pulled back to what I call maintenance mode. So I do a few times a week, just a couple of times a week standing at home, and a few other things that I can do. And I was like, you know, I'm going to start to focus on what I can do that, you know, that I can still do in my life to make me happy. And actually, the day after this neurosurgeon appointment, I went to the Center for Brain Research at Auckland University, to the spinal cord injury research facility there. And it was a bit of an uplifting moment after, you know, a very grounding moment with the neurosurgeon. So, yeah, that kind of combination of things, I just went, look, you know, it's time to start focusing on what I can do to have fun and to enjoy life again.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up on walking again. I'm not giving up on that goal, but I'm not going to focus solely on.
I'm not going to obsess on it. Kind of
Yeah.
like not every waking moment of your day. So, what does bring you joy? What does make you happy now?
Well, it's become more about the little things. More about actually. There's a really good quote that I love out of my favorite book, which is Dan Millman's Way of the Peaceful Warrior.
Yeah.
It's an amazing book. And the quote is, the secret to happiness you see is not found in seeking more, but is discovered in developing the capacity to enjoy less. And so It took me a while to wrap my head around that. And I'm like, well, how do you enjoy more out of how do you find more happiness out of enjoying less? I was kind of, you know, but it's developing the capacity to enjoy less, to gain more fulfillment, more enjoyment out of lesser things, lesser, you know, whether it's less money, less,
Yeah,
you know, but for me, it's about experiences with friends and, you know, just getting amongst nature, I think's one of the bigger things that I feel like it just helps kind of reset my soul in a way. You know,
yeah, right.
I'm sure a lot of us felt that by the end of lockdown, you know, when you finally get to go out and see your friends and go for a walk along the beach or do, you know, it's just such a refreshing feeling. And so I get my friends pushing me through some trails out west, and then kind of plunged into the world of free diving. And
now, I'm going to post some of this up later on because this is bloody incredible. But before I do that, one observation I have made, and just following what you've done, is you do have some bloody fantastic friends in your life, don't you? And you obviously deserve that. You're obviously a good bugger, and you know people love you. But that must make life enjoyable. Not everybody is lucky to have lots of great friends in their life, you know?
Yeah, I really do, and I'm really lucky. And I think, you know, it's very easy for someone in my position to kind of hide away and stay at home and feel like you're a burden on everyone. And
yes,
because that was one of the big issues I felt, and even still kind of struggle with that a little bit because, you know, I rely on my friends for everything. Like,
yeah,
if not my friends, then my caregivers or my family. Like it's,
yes,
I literally have, this is as much independence as I have, is to be able to sit here and use my phone and computer. And so, there are times where it can still be a bit of a struggle where I'm, I want to go and get in the ocean and, do my first little free dive in the ocean, but it's like trying to round up the troops to do that. When everyone's got a bloody day job, like
what's wrong with people? So let's talk. I'm speaking to Alexia at 6:30, so we're going to have to. Okay. Do you know Alexia Hilberto?
No, I've only got the similar name in the side of on my bedside table in my room.
Great person. I'm looking forward to that. Tell me about explain the free diving and what the hell you're up to with that. Because when I saw that for the first time, I thought, what the hell is he doing now?
Well, that came from that thought of, okay, what can I do now that I find really enjoying? And there were a couple of the main ones that came from that on the extreme ends were skydiving and scuba diving. Neither of which I've done yet. I did some scuba diving before my accident, but I called a dive doctor. Well, I called a dive school. They were like, you got to speak to a dive doctor. Got onto the dive doctor. He said, absolutely not. I cannot give you permission to go scuba diving. And I asked him why and what the risks were. And he said it was because breathing compressed gas underwater creates nitrogen bubbles in the blood and could potentially create nitrogen bubbles on the scar tissue in your spinal cord. And that would have the potential as well to block the cerebral fluid from flowing to my brain, which obviously wouldn't be good. And so obviously that sucked, to have that door slammed in my face, basically. But then I was kind of like, wait, did you say it was from breathing compressed gas underwater? Like, that's the risk. So in theory, if I hold my breath, then that eliminates that risk. And he's like, yeah, I guess, but kind of brings in a few more other risks. But nothing on a medical level like that. And so I practiced holding my breath a few times. Before my accident, my record was like 3.5 minutes. So you
had done it previously?
Not free diving, but just in a swimming pool. I just hang out and practice holding my breath. And
oh my God, okay.
And I think, when I really pushed it, I got to 3.5 minutes. But then within 2 or 3 attempts, I'd already beaten that record. I was like, hang on, how can that be when I'm supposed to have more vulnerable respiratory system and, weakened respiratory function and everything. And I put it down to the fact that the rest of my body's not using the oxygen and blood flow that everyone else's does. And I've had to learn to overcome anxiety and stress and be able to remain extremely calm in stressful situations. And I think the combination of those has given me what I'm now at a 5-minute, 45-second breath hold.
So, sorry, can you say that again? What's your record so far?
5 minutes, 45 seconds.
5 minutes, 45 seconds. Shit. That's not bad, is it?
Yeah. I'm so determined to get 6 minutes though.
I'd be lucky to do 20 seconds. So what projects are you doing at the moment that you can tell us about, or is it all kind of top secret? You're always up to something.
Yeah, I've got a few cool projects going at the moment. The main one that I can tell you about, but I don't really know exactly when it's going to be ready. Hopefully either by the end of the year or early next year, I'll have an autobiography out. So that's a book I've written solely with this, typing on my phone.
Seriously?
I don't bother dictating because I have to go back and fix all the mistakes, and it takes even longer. And then
have you seriously written it with that?
I've written over 150,000 words already with that.
Are you a quick typer with that?
Quicker than Mum. Yeah.
Really?
I'm quicker at texting than Mum is, which that's not hard, but I mean, my word count doubled though. I feel like maybe even more than doubled when Apple introduced the swipe texting rather than just tapping.
Yeah.
So rather than being a woodpecker doing this the whole time, I could now just swipe side to side, and it just
right.
became a lot faster.
Words. I've got a really good friend of mine who publishes books, and his name's Josh Easby. Great guy, lives in Cambridge, and he reckons that the art to writing a book, he said, often what people will do is that they will start writing, and they might write a couple of pages, and then they go, oh shit, that's no good, I'm going to go back and I'm going to just fix this up, and they keep fixing the first 2 pages up forever and ever, and they don't make any progress. And he reckons the art to it is just start typing, and just, it's my son Ben in the background, 15 years of age, you can remember when you were 15, you're just about ready to go overseas. He reckons keep writing, just write and write and write, get the draft done, doesn't need to be perfect, but just write, and then go back and do another edit.
And that's what I found at the beginning, as I was too much of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I'm like that with everything. And so try being a perfectionist when other people are doing everything for you. Yeah. Oh my God.
That must be hard.
I mean, you saw at the beginning, just getting the headphones plugged in.
I did think, I was like, oh shit, Jesus, she's putting the headphones on.
Yeah. So that's something that is full on. But so, I mean, at 150,000 words, I'm already at about the length of Andre Agassi's book Open, which is huge.
What? That's the seriously, that's the only sports book I've ever read. I love that book.
That's one that I read, and I've kind of taken a bit of that first person present tense. Yeah. That's how I'm writing mine. And I've read most of the way, well, probably 2/3 of the way through Scar Tissue. And that's one that I'm like, I'm reading that. Hot Chili Peppers? Yeah.
I've got that book as well. Yeah.
So I'm reading that to find ways to tactically talk about sex and drugs.
Brilliant.
Because, you got to be able to put it in a way that's digestible and easy to read and stuff, it doesn't turn into a sex novel, but
love it.
But yeah, so I'd say I'll probably end up at about 200,000 words by the time I'm done, and we're going to have to probably whittle that down to about 120,000 is, I think, what they want. And so that's the thing, like the fact that I'm brain dumping and I'm just getting so much out and I'm going year by year by year, and it means there's a lot that they'll be able to condense down. And
hey, you should do an audio book too, because you've actually got a great voice.
Yeah, I just am really slow at reading, so I'll have to get better at that.
Yeah, but you're one of those people. Some people have got, and because I've worked in radio all my life, I can pick up what I think is a great voice straight away, and you've got that, so you could easily carry that off.
Yeah, and that's what I told my publisher straight away. I was like, I'm going to record my audio book. Like, it needs to be my voice because it's first person presenting. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so that's a fun project, working on that. There's also hopefully a documentary project in the works, but there's no real timeline or anything on that. There's a lot involved in something like that, especially at the scale that we're trying to produce something at. So,
hey, we have a comment here from Ivana Korik. Have known Brad for some time now, well before his accident, and I absolutely love his attitude. He has and has always had a certain energy, that of a bloody winner. And I mean that in every sense of the word. Great to see him thriving and doing great things. Inspirational. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's nice. I'd agree with that too. I can remember our first phone call, and I just got off the phone.
Wait. I think this will be our second phone call.
Yeah, you were always texting. Yeah, exactly.
No. So the one you're talking about was our second phone call.
Oh, was it?
Our first one was, you must have been like just going in or coming out of a meeting, and I just called you out of the blue. I don't think you even put two and two together that I was my mother's son.
Oh God, really?
But then, yeah, we had that second phone call. I think, it was one that I think you just said you said on the first one, oh yeah, send me an email or something. And then just to get an intro, you know, I'm just some random calling you out of the blue. You didn't know who I was, so
yeah.
And then, but yeah, our second one, we spoke for ages.
Oh, it was about an hour and a half, I think. And then I was just like, this guy's great. It's like, he's a motivational speaker. It's great. Yeah, I think you're right. I felt a bit embarrassed because I've known Linda for years and years and years, and I was like, oh, shit, it's Linda's son.
Yeah.
Better get my shit together. Yeah.
But yeah, you're. I was going to say you're a couple minutes away from starting your next one, so we might as well. Yeah,
we might as well wrap it up.
Have you got anything else to end on?
The reason I started this business 4 years ago is because I'm someone that's always kind of like motivational CDs and stuff like that. I don't know why. It's just always been like that. And you represent all that. When you go and speak to clients for us, you know, they always come back and they always go, that guy is so inspirational. And I'm just so grateful that you've given us a chance to represent you because, you know, as Ivana just said, it's very true. You've just been born with this amazing gift of just having positive energy. And surely that's what the world needs right now. It really does. So thank you, mate, and all the very best with your upcoming projects.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It's obviously, I was stoked to get involved and be able to get some, you know, get out and spread kind of the message more. I feel like too many people go through life afraid of what everyone's going to think of them all the time and feeling like they're just not good enough, you know, and we've got this whatever this enough standard is, wherever that comes from. I think we make it up ourselves most of the time. And I think that just in general, like we all have the ability to change our attitude, because I think that's where it really starts is by having a good attitude. And I think that comes back to that quote that I said earlier, you know, about having the ability to enjoy less. That's in your attitude, and it's in your approach to those things that, you know, like a sunset or a sunrise, like that's just the most simple thing, but is just still the most epic thing to go and enjoy and experience. So yeah, just got to tweak what you can do. Like for me, it was about changing what I could control, and that was in my mind. So yeah, I'm glad to be able to share that message and, as you say, inspire others, and hope to do a lot more.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure, Shaun.
Be good, and I'll talk soon.
Yeah, cheers.
Bye.